everybody and welcome back. We are here today for a new series called Bind It All. I had been thinking about this for a little while. I have been a journal maker and album maker for a few years, but I always find that I tend to go for the same binding methods. And I wanted to experiment a little bit more, so I had a chat with Sophie, who's on my design team and also owner for Sophie's Crafty Corner, and asked if she wanted to do this series with me. As I said, I tend to stick to the same three binding systems. So most common, I think, is the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So on this one, I've used the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. Sometimes you can have your string on the inside of your signatures. This time I did it on the outside just so I could have some dangles. But that tends to be the go-to. And lots of people, I think, tend to lean towards that particular binding system. Another system that I've been using recently is the, I think it's called the Midori system, where you have elastic binding, because then you can just slot your pages in and out, and these pages are not bound. There's an elastic in there and you can just slide pages in and out. Really useful if you are somebody that kind of likes to change up your pages, especially if perhaps you have a particular cover that you like but you want to keep swapping in and out the pages. That's a really great method. And a few times I've done a ring bound journal, so using rings to bind the pages. This one was a fun one, and again it's nice because I can open up the rings, I can take out pages if I want to, and adapt and change things. So I really like the ring bound as well. But as I said, these three systems tend to be the ones that I go for. Now, when I first started bookmaking and fell down the rabbit hole of junk journals, I obviously wanted to try all the things. So I have tried other methods, but these three tend to be the ones that I return to. So I wanted to do a little bit of exploring, looking at different binding methods, revisiting ones that I've done before and perhaps have just forgotten about. I have to admit I have been hitting a crafting slump lately. So I'm hoping that by trying different binding methods, I will kind of get re-inspired and back into it, because like I said, I'm in a bit of a slump. I don't like it because I miss crafting. So yeah, hopefully this will help. And I'm really hoping that you guys will enjoy this as well, because again, like I said, lots of people tend to kind of go for these methods. So maybe there's a method coming up that you've tried before and forgotten, or maybe you're new to this and making journals, and you just want some ideas, some different ideas on binding systems. Now, Sophie and I are going to be doing this video every other week, so it'll be coming out each fortnight. We will both be working on the same stitch or the same binding system. And what we're also going to do is perhaps give it a little bit of a rating. Now, as I said, I've been making journals for years, and I think Sophie is quite experienced as well. So we will give it a difficulty rating on what we think, say, a beginner could do or somebody more experienced. So we will give it a bit of a rating as well. So again, if you are new, you may perhaps really want a challenge. If we say, oh yeah, this was quite a difficult binding system, you may want to challenge and still go for it. Obviously, yes, do that. But obviously, if you are starting out, you're a little bit nervous, you want to start with something a bit simpler, we will obviously let you know which ones we think are a kind of nice, easy binding system. Now, because these three are the common ones, that's not what we're starting with today. We are going to be doing a binding system called the long stitch. So I'm going to move these out of the way to start with, so we can make some room. Now, in a recent video, I shared this. I actually bought a bookbinding kit because I wanted to test it out. I wanted to see what you kind of get in the kit and if it was any good. Now, this is similar to a long stitch. It's not the same, but it is similar. And there are variations on how you can do the long stitch. The way that we are going to bind the top is going to be a little bit different. And these pieces are going to be longer on the binding that I show you today, but it's a similar kind of style like this. So unlike the 3-hole pamphlet stitch, there will be more holes here where you'll see the strings. And that's what we're going to attempt today. Right, okay, so I have already obviously got some bits ready. If you wish to partake in this and make your own journal, I'll just go through some of the things that you're going to need. So you are going to need some signatures. I'm only doing 4. You can do a lot more than that. I probably wouldn't go any less than that. That I would say is probably the minimum for it to look really effective down the spine. They're not thick signatures. I've got, I think, 5 sheets of paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5 sheets of paper folded in half for my signatures. So they're not overly chunky. That just makes it easy to bind. And then I have a soft piece of material. So I'm actually using a faux leather, and it's got a nice kind of felt on the inside. So it's a nice soft cover. That makes it really good and flexible for the journal pages to kind of lay flat as well. So that is beneficial if you can use a softer cover. You could do this also on a hard spine, but like I said, I'm using a soft one just because I think it makes it much more flexible for the pages, and it just makes it easier for it to lay flat. But you can, of course, do the same thing on a hard spine and using a hard cover. So how I kind of figured out my cover size, what I did is I just took one of my signatures, and these are just tea stained paper. It's A4 folded in half, so I haven't trimmed anything, I haven't cut anything down. I have used some other papers as well, so I've got these handwriting sheets. That's, I think, Amazon packaging paper, which I did cut down to an A4 size. I've got a book page, and then I've got another tea stained, I think it's graph paper, that's A4 as well. So that's all I've used for my signatures. And to get the right size for my cover, all I did is I laid my tea stained papers on top, and then I kind of worked out where the start of my spine would be. I then flipped it over, worked out where the end of my spine would be, and then I kind of measured that on a piece of card. So this card is the right thickness, and actually it works out an inch. Now, obviously, depending on what size papers you use would depend on how big your cover is. If you are folding A4 pieces of paper in half, then you will need a cover that is just under 8.5 inches tall, and one that is 12.75 inches long. And my spine is 1 inch. And then, as you can see, I already have my holes. And the way that I've worked those out is that obviously this is 1 inch wide. So what I did, and do apologise because I'm not fantastic with inches, but I came in 1/8 of an inch, and that's where my first hole's going. I then went in 3/8, 5/8 and 7/8. So that's where my 4 holes are. So 1/8, 3/8, 5/8, 7/8. And then that just gave me an even gap between each of the signatures. Then the distance between these dots, the first one I put at 1/2 inch down from the top, then it was 1 inch. Then from that 1 inch mark, I came down, let's have a look, 2 7/8. And then I did the same up the other end. So again, I came in 1/2 inch, another 1/2 inch, so 1 inch in total, and then 2 7/8 from there. And then that just gave me a nice gap. It's a bit more than 1/2 inch in the middle, but that part I wasn't particularly fussed of. I just wanted this bit here to be even. So these two are a mirror image of each other. And that's how I measured my holes. I hope that makes sense. So it was 1/8, 3/8, 5/8, 7/8 between these dots. It was 1/2 inch, another 1/2 inch. Then it was 2 3/4 inches between those dots. And then I did the same working from the bottom. So 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, and then 2 3/4 inch from between these two holes. Then all I did was just lay this on top, and then I used my poker tool to poke through. So I've already poked my holes in here. I did the same for my pages. So again, I just laid this in lined it up, and then poked my holes. And I've done that for all of my signatures so that we are ready to start sewing. Now I am using a waxed thread, so I've got my black waxed thread here. I do recommend a waxed thread just because it is so much easier. So I'm just going to do this a few heights of the book. So normally if I'm doing a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, I do about 3 heights of the book. I think I'm going to have to do more than that for this one, because obviously I've got a few signatures to go through. It doesn't matter if you don't get it completely right, because there is a way to kind of extend this if you need to. So what you do is you thread this onto a needle. Now there are different options with needles. I've got a straight needle and I've got a curved one. I prefer the curved ones for binding out of here. This one though, I will need to grab a loop in just a moment. So first of all, I'm going to thread my needle and just fold it over, and then at the other end I need to tie a knot. So just make sure that there is a knot in the other end, like so, and it just needs to be obviously big enough that it doesn't go through the hole. So I'm actually going to put this through 3 times. That should absolutely be plenty. Now obviously it doesn't matter if you start front to back. I tend to always start at the back, and it's very similar to the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. It's just the start that is a little bit different, but essentially we're still going to be weaving in and out. So the first thing I'm going to do is come through my papers. And I'm just going to pull all of that through. Until we obviously get the knot at the top. So all the way through until we get the knot at the top. Then going to go through the first hole. And you pull it out. And I'm going to turn this sideways just because it's going to be easier when I'm kind of weaving in and out. Then you're going to go back through the same hole. So you go back through where you've just come out. So you pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it. I'm also going to go through the paper again. So this seems counterintuitive. I promise there is a method to this madness in a second. So you come out through the papers. She says, there we go. And then you just want to keep pulling that thread through, but be careful, you don't want all of that thread coming through. So you're just going to keep pulling, 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 pulling. And you want to keep going until you get a teeny little hoop. Now this is where I like to pop my needle in, just so I don't accidentally pull the thread through. So I just leave my needle in like that, and that hopefully will hold it in place, because yeah, I know that I would totally end up pulling that through. So the first thing I want to do is just obviously make sure that this is tight. So I'm just going to pull that out a moment, just so I can make sure that this is obviously taut. So that knot's now up against the paper. This is now taut against that needle. But I promise you, this is the fiddly bit. Once you've kind of done this bit, then it all kind of comes together quite nicely. So now that we've done that, we're then going to carry on as we would in any other 3-hole pamphlet stitch. You kind of go out of the paper and out of the cover. And it's quite nice that it's a flexible cover as well. So you come out, pull all of that thread through, and then you'll have a little stitch here. Then you're going to come all the way down. Now this is where I'm going to use my pokey tool. Now because I'm using a kind of faux leather, it's a little bit tricky to see where the hole is, but I can see it on this side. It's just not easy to see it on the other side. So I'm just going to poke my pokey tool through. So I know it's a bit tricky to see because I'm doing it on a black surface, but I'm going to put my pokey tool through, and then I'm just going to allow my needle to follow where it's going. And that just makes it a little bit easier to find where that hole is. Okay. And then just try and get it through all the papers. But I think this part here, this binding bit, is why I tend to go for like a ring bound or something, because this is the bit that always annoyed me with the 3-hole pamphlet stitch, is just trying to get all of these papers in through the hole. There we go. So again, just pull it up. Again, just pulling it taut. You don't want it tight that it's going to rip, but you do want it taut. And then you go back out through the next hole. So again, I'm going through the paper and the cover. Again, at each stage, just making sure that it's nice and taut. And then again, I need to go back in at the bottom, but I can't see where it is, so I'm just going to pop my pokey tool in, see where it is on the cover, and then use that as my guide. So I'm just going to follow that pokey tool through. Again, just try and feed it through all of those papers. There we go. So this part, like I said, isn't the hard part, because this is very much like the 3-hole pamphlet stitch, just weaving in and out. Then go through the last hole. And you pull all the way through like so. Right, you are then going to need your next signature. So you're going to bring your next signature in and lay it on top, ready to go. Now again, I'm going to need my pokey tool because I can't see from the outside where I'm coming in. And you're just going to go straight across into the next hole along. Okay, so straight across, thread it all through. Then we're going to thread it to this signature. So again, I'm just going to open it up, come in at the bottom, pull it through, again making sure that it's nice and taut. Then going to go up into the next one, out of the cover, it got stuck then. There we go. So again, just making sure that it's nice and taut. You don't want these being particularly loose. I'm just going to find the middle, just so I can pull up that thread, because I want to make sure it's nice and taut there. And then I can pull it nice and taut on the outside as well. Right, then going to get my poker tool, because I need to come back in. So just lining up where I can see it on this side, poking my poker tool through, and then coming back in with the needle, following where my poker tool is. Oh, that was easier that time. That comes straight through all the paper as well. So sometimes that bit's really easy. Like I said, sometimes it's just made difficult. Okay, and you pull all of that through, again, making sure that it's nice and taut. And then we're going to go back out through the next hole. And out this way. And again, just going to pull it nice and taut, just to really make sure. Right, we're nearly at the top, and that's where you're going to need that loop that you've made. So let's just get this bit out. So again, I'm going to feed back in, following my pokey tool. Hopefully, yeah, it goes through all the paper as well. I still seem to have plenty of thread, which is good. Like I said, there is a way you can just kind of tie it off and then cut a new piece and just carry on as normal. Right, so I'm going to go back all the way out again of the cover. Again, just giving a nice pull to make sure that it's nice and taut. Right, then this is when you want to use this little loop that you've made. So I'm going to slowly pull that out, and I'm going to slot that in there. And then that links those two together. You can then get your next signature ready. So there's the middle, and again I'm going to have to use my pokey tool because I'm coming back in from the outside. So I'm just going to find where that hole is. It's there, and then you carry on. So I'm going to go down through where the pokey tool is going. And hopefully, yeah, I missed the papers. Right, so that's in. Let's just sort these papers out again. Right, so I'm going to then push these through like so. Again, just going to check that that is nice and taut. So I'm just going to check on the outside. Yep, and then go through the next hole. And then this part is pretty much the same. So you're just literally going in and out as you normally would. Okay, now as we come out this bottom hole, what we're going to do is kind of mirror what we've done at the top. So we're going to loop this in. And then we're going to move over to our next signature. But as you can see, the binding's coming along, so we've got that nice long stitch there in the middle. I'm just going to tighten these a little bit, just because I think they're a little bit loose. There it is. Yeah, that's one thing you want to be careful of. You want to make sure that you're constantly checking that it's nice and tight. And if it's not, try and go through and tighten it. So I'm just going to pull this one a little bit. And then I can pull up the rest. Like I said, this part might be easier on a harder spine. When it's a softer spine, it's a little bit more tricky to kind of get that tautness. There we go, that's better. Right, so then we're going to go in through the last hole of the last signature. So I'm going to pop this one on the top. Again, I'm just going to use my pokey tool just to help guide where the final holes are. Where's my needle gone? Up there. Pop that down. And pull through. Now, as I said, there are variations for the long stitch. This is just the one that I think is probably one of the better long stitch variations. The variation tends to come with that bottom stitch here, how you loop this. Some people kind of loop as I'm doing, some people don't. I just think when you kind of like loop it in, it makes it kind of holds it all together better, which is why I do it this way. Now I must admit, I've only done the long stitch I think twice before this, not including the bookbinding kit that I got from Weebly, which I did pay for. It wasn't a sponsored video or anything. I did pay for that because I was just interested in what you get and how to do it. But I have done this a couple of times, and it is a really nice method. And like I said, this is why I kind of wanted to start this series, because you kind of forget of all these sort of fancy ways that you can bind journals. So it's nice to try something new. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking for the faux leather probably wasn't the best idea because it's making it a little bit difficult at the moment, but again, that could just be me. That could be user error rather than the material. It goes in there. Out it comes, and this time I'm making sure that I am pulling it taut at every point. And then we are now coming to the end. So this is going to go out of the book pages and the cover. And again, I'm going to loop through the previous stitch. I'm then going to go back in the way that I've just come. Oops. So again, just making sure that's nice and taut. Back in the way I've just come. And then here you can knot it off. And yeah, I had plenty of thread. There's me worrying, thinking, oh, I might have to do something, but I don't have to do anything at all. It's been absolutely fine. Okay, so we're just going to knot it there. I'm going to do one more pass through. Oops. Just to make sure that that's nice and secure. Wonderful. And I'm just going to snip that thread. Okay, and then there is the bound book. So I'll show you how the spine looks. Now, because it's flexible, it means that it can curve, but that's how the spine looks. So you've got that nice long stitch in the middle. It also means that this opens up a lot flatter because obviously it is a soft spine, it is a soft cover, so the pages do open and stay open wherever you are in the journal. So that's really nice about having a soft cover. But yeah, that is the binding. So I really hope that you've kind of enjoyed this. I guess it's kind of a tutorial, but it's also just a demonstration of different bindings that you could do. I'm really liking a soft cover at the moment. Actually, I like the fact that it's all kind of soft and squidgy. I might add a closure or something to it and decorate it. I haven't decided yet, but I'm really liking this spine and how the stitches look. As I said, you could absolutely do this on a hard cover with a hard spine. I just wanted to try it on a soft cover because I've got lots of these kind of faux leather pieces, so I thought that'd be quite fun. And then, as I said, I just love the fact that it now all lays flat as well. Well, Sophie is also doing a video showing her take on the long stitch, so make sure that you go and check hers out. I will have her channel linked down below. As I said at the beginning, this is something Sophie and I are going to be doing every other week. We'll be introducing different stitches that we're trying, and as I said, giving them a rating. Now, I would probably give this a 3 out of 5 for difficulty, mostly because I think it's this bit here that gets a little bit tricky and trying to measure out where you need to put your holes. Once you've mastered that, it's not too bad. It's very much like the pamphlet stitch where you're kind of just going in and out of the papers and the cover. It is just that bit at the top and the bottom, remembering to kind of loop it into the previous stitch. So yeah, I would say about a 3 out of 5 for difficulty for this one. I don't think it's too bad. It is just the measuring. I'm not one for measuring. So that for me is what I think makes it just a little bit trickier. Well, thank you very much for joining me. If you have enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you are not already a subscriber, I would really love for you to do so. Please also make sure that you click that bell button. That way you are notified of any new crafty videos. I'm really happy that you have joined me today. I hope you have a wonderful day and I will see you all in the next crafty video. Bye for now.